Welcome back to Tuff Talk. I am so fired up to present my interview with Kroy Biermann. Now, a lot of people remember Kroy as the Atlanta Falcons player or his Bravo TV show, but what you don't know is what he has such a profound outlook on, which is how many of you are sitting on the fence around a decision. So if you're ready to take action, tune in today to my interview with Kroy. All right, Kroy, I'm so psyched to have you in the Impact Factory. Thanks so much for making time. I know you're all over the place. So
no, thank you. I couldn't be more excited to be here with you. So
that's awesome. Well, yeah. I mean, talk about, it was amazing. As I was in a meeting earlier, I was talking to this woman who I met from one of my speeches at a large corporation, and she turned to me as I met her for coffee, and she was like, Chris, how is it that you get to this connection place so fast? And I turned to her, I was like, how many times have we met? She goes, I met you once when you came in for a 15-minute speech to the team here.
Right.
And I was like, and look at us now. Yep. It's all about action, right? And I think it's a great segue into how, obviously, I had known about you. I had seen you play. I'd seen you here and there on TV. And we were on a flight, right?
We were.
Where were we going?
Turks.
You
were going windsurfing, and I was going to sit on the beach.
I was going kiteboarding. You were there sitting on the beach.
Yeah.
And I remember you sitting down. And I think everyone was like whispering, like, oh, they're the Biermanns, blah, 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 right? And we're sitting right next to each other. And I've got two of my buddies I'm going kiteboarding with, and they're like, oh gosh, Chris always makes best friends on planes. And I look over and we just start talking. Yep. And here's one thing that stood out to me in that first interaction. Obviously, I never stopped talking, but it was, I could tell you were very discerning of whether or not you were going to let me into your ecosystem to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
sure,
the gatekeeper.
Yeah. That's
right?
That's a good term. I like that.
And I think you was my gatekeeper, Kroy.
I could do that.
But I could tell in the back and forth, obviously, as I was talking about whatever it was that I was talking about. I think I just published my first book and trying to give you all advice in that domain. And there was this one moment where I was like, okay, I finally passed this BS meter. I think.
You did. Yeah, you sure did. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that too, because I think uniquely enough during kind of that time of my life, I was on like high alert because there was so many moving parts in my life that I just maybe wasn't even aware of it, but I was definitely like very high alert in a sense that like aware of what people brought to the table or what they wanted or what they were all about. So
well, I also had Pete with me who knew you and was like, Chris, if you pass Kroy's test, like you're in. And he's got like, he's like, listen, they do one Instagram post and it like blows. It's crazy, their influence. I'm like, yeah. I don't care about any of that stuff. I just want to help make stuff happen. But
sure,
what I love so much about, and I think this is indicative of a lot of relationships, much like my discussion with this woman earlier today, where so many people fail to take action, right? We make connections all over the place, but we fail to really deepen those connections as well as sustaining those.
Sure.
And what I love so much as I've gotten to know you is that the deepening of that connection didn't really happen for a couple of years, wouldn't you say?
Agree.
Because we started kind of working together in the podcast thing. And through that, I would always get you fired up and I'd come by, give you ideas to the house. But it wasn't really until you reached out saying, hey, Chris, I'm looking at making some big changes in my life. Do you think you could think about some options for me? And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Right. Because I also, it's important to note, like one of the reasons why I wanted you on Tuff Talk, which is all about reinvention, I look at your story of growing up in Montana and then becoming, what is it? I don't even know, 0.1% of the population or boys that grow up wanting to be an NFL star. You are that NFL star.
Right.
Then you go into more of the showbiz stuff, right? And now you're in the middle of a new, what I would call kind of reinvention, right? And for someone to be able to do that, you don't find many people that can do that.
Right. No, I agree, you know, and I attribute a lot of that. It could be, gosh, what word am I looking for? Like, it's good and bad. Like my discipline that got me to be able to go as far as I could in the NFL, and then be able to discipline myself to transition into like a business builder, business manager, and learn a new trade through, social media endorsements and filming and all of those types of things. Also, too, at the same time, when you're so disciplined into something that maybe isn't working, it can be very hard to transition out of it when you should have maybe transitioned out of it sooner than later. And so it's a double-edged sword, that attribute, I think, that allows me to, like you mentioned, reinvent myself, whereas I maybe should have reinvented sooner. But at the same time, you know, the path that I'm on has a purpose to it. And the path that I am on is not a path directed necessarily by me. And I know that there is a lot in front of me that is going to be very impactful. And I'm right in the thick of a new reinvention at the moment.
Well, and I think you're a pretty misunderstood person, right? I mean, for someone that has had so much of their life in the public domain, it's interesting as I bring you up in conversation as an inspiration really around when I start talking about the importance of resilience and tenacity, right? How do you, when you're in those moments of absolute despair, what is it that you can do to actually start taking action to move towards something?
Sure.
And it's super interesting how you have this kind of polarizing reputation, right?
Sure.
To a certain extent. And that's where I turn and I'm like, nope, actually, if it's not right. And actually, I'd say most of the time it's positive, but every once in a while you hear the negative piece and it's like, nope, absolutely not. Like, what is that like for you?
I've never been one to put any weight on anybody's opinion that I didn't find that I had a close relationship with.
How do you do that though?
Because ultimately their opinion has no effect on my day to day. You know, their opinion and what they think of me and what they even say about me. I mean, I guess maybe if somebody was totally tarnishing my reputation where I maybe couldn't get like an opportunity or something of that nature, but ultimately somebody's opinion has no bearing on anything that goes on in my life. Where I spend my time, who I spend my time with, what I love to do, it has nothing to do with any of that. So why would I let that affect any part of my life? Now, if I have a close relationship with you and you are giving me feedback or you're giving me criticism or you're holding me accountable to something, I will take that to heart, and I will totally listen to that opinion and allow that to somewhat direct my life, because ultimately I have a close relationship with you because I trust you, you know, and I depend on those people to help me navigate situations and help me see the blind spots that I don't see in my own life, and ultimately make me into a better person. So I've never listened to the noise, you know, and I don't, again, it doesn't have any bearing on me.
It's amazing. You know, and I'd like to say I don't, but sure enough, right, when I read like my reviews after a speech, and there's the one negative one, a guy named John Acuff, who is actually part of my same speaking bureau, he calls it loser's math. And loser's math is where you just see the one negative thing and you're like, I thought it was a great speech. Why? Like, and that to me is also there's so much that I feel like not only I can learn from you, but that you can teach the world. Sure. And so, the other important aspect as I have gotten to know you, Kroy, is the importance of family and just how much time and dedication you pour into that while also juggling so much. Take us through how it is that you prioritize your life and your day to day. I mean,
sure. Well, and that's changed a significant amount recently of how I've had to adapt and manage my time. Prior to kind of my new venture at the moment, I would schedule, I would know schedule. I'm very routine oriented, and knew my routine pretty well. And ultimately kind of kept a decently tight ship. Again, I'm very disciplined. And with routine and discipline comes the ability to forecast and kind of project and know, anticipate, what to expect on the day to day. And that really helped me just kind of manage it all. But at the same time too, there's a lot of factors that kind of come flying at you on a day-to-day basis that you maybe didn't anticipate or you weren't ready for or whatever. And in order to handle those, ultimately you have to have a pretty strong foundation. My foundation is God. And understanding that if you attack or if you handle each kind of flying arrow at you that you did not anticipate on a daily basis with the core principles that you believe in, those will work out for good, and those will ultimately help you on your path. It may seem bad in the moment, or it may seem stressful. It may seem, unsurmountable, but ultimately, if you have a really, really good foundation, good will come of that, and it will direct you and help you, be some sort of fuel to the direction you want to go.
Well, I think one of the things that, like, as I look at your evolution and in the middle of this reinvention, it's just the importance of progress and routine. And it was interesting as we were talking back and forth on the phone, we'd gone, a few months, because I was like, all right, I got to let Kroy kind of do his thing. I'm not going to, I'm going to resist the temptation to try to be the catalyst. Right. I'm going to leave him alone. I'm going to let him work through this. And I'm like, all right, it's been long enough. All right, Kroy, what's going on? And you're like, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about doing that. I'm like, nope. No, you're not. Here's what we're going to do, Kroy. You're going to come meet me at my buddy Patrick's house, who a lot of people know of Patrick because he's been on the podcast. And we're going to just spend an afternoon. We're going to ideate while we do cold plunge sauna session. Are you down? You're like, yeah, I'm totally down. Yep. And sure enough, what was that? Probably 2 months ago, maybe?
Yeah, almost now. Yeah. Almost 2 months ago.
And here you are, all fancy, dressed in front of me. But, I think we all go through these seasons of life, right? And there are seasons of asks, and then there's most of our life should, I believe, be seasons of giving.
Sure.
Right. I'm actually transitioning into a season of asks because I need to start making some money in all this. I can see it shifting, but, to me, so many people could have just shown up that one afternoon and taken no action, right? And it's like, oh, and I see it time and time again with people that I try to just bring along when they need it, and then there's no follow through, and that's not you, right? And what excites me so much about not only our connection and relationship, obviously, which is super important to me, but it's to watch the evolution of what's going to happen, because I can see it probably better than you can see it right now.
I think so. Right. Yeah, you have that creative vision where that's not a strength of mine. I'm again, that's not, I wouldn't say part of my personality. And we did one of those one of your crazy things, and you probably know better where I stand.
And that was really what connected us. Yes. Right. I took Kroy through his personality test. Yeah. Because I was like, Kroy, 11% of people are actually doing jobs that match their personality. I would guess that for the last handful of years, you've been doing things way outside of your natural comfort zone. Like, we got to find that zone of genius.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing, I got labeled that even in the NFL, kind of a jack of all trades. I was never a master of one thing. I was good at pass rushing. I was good at run defense. I was good at like a 7 technique head up on a tight end. Were there guys better in all of those areas? Sure. There sure was. But I was efficient in enough of those where they knew that I could have a large toolbox of resources, which made me valuable because I could do a lot of different things at a really good efficiency, or at a good level. And so that transitioned, or helped me transition into the career I kind of went into. I wouldn't necessarily call it a career, but just the role that I took on within our family and our family businesses, and I just hit the ground running and said, I can learn anything, and my mind's always worked that way. And I think I got that from watching my father kind of fiddle around in the house, and he would do chores, and he did remodelings through our whole house. And I would watch him, like do electrical work and plumbing work. And he gave me the freedom to kind of just explore on my own. And I finally, when I had kind of that freedom, he gave me this approach to life, I guess, where if you can reverse engineer anything, right? Or if you can find there's a way to build anything, or there's a way to figure out how to do everything, and you may not be a master at it, but you can be good enough at it to where you can help somebody, or you can make an impact in somebody's life, or you can build something. And then if you can't figure it out, like you love to say, hire an expert, if you get to an area where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not an expert in this, but I need, and so that was kind of the approach that I took in that transition from the NFL to that area of my life where I took on that role of managing some businesses. And I just did the best I could to figure things out on the fly, and built systems and procedures and things to help me be more efficient with templates and all different kinds of things, and just kind of learned as I went. And you continue to kind of put those things in your toolbox,
Totally.
And I got lots of tools in my toolbox. And as I faced the current life challenge that I'm in right now, I didn't, I felt like I was pretty darn good with my professional toolbox, but my professional toolbox had taken over my time, and I wasn't so good on my personal, mental, emotional toolbox. I'd let that slip. I'd let that kind of, get lackadaisical, and hadn't put too much energy into that. And definitely could recognize where my life, if those two things aren't kind of being built cohesively together,
Totally.
Ultimately one of those is either going to pull that one down, or it's just kind of implode altogether, and I had to build that emotional, like you said, you were sitting there kind of waiting, like, you had tried and tried. And I just said, it's not yet. It's not time yet, Chris. I got to focus. I got to get through this. I got to get to a better place. And I had to kind of rebuild that my soul a little bit, and get myself to a place where I knew that I could take on a new challenge and take it on with the energy it would need, with the focus it would need, the attention it would need, and give it what I would, I guess, consider respectable to be able to give somebody in that industry. So,
well, I saw it, right? Like, I mean, I don't know how long that was, but the second I saw you, I was like, oh my God. Like, obviously the beard helps, but I'm like, dude, you're like a totally new person.
Right.
There was a much different feel than what I'd seen a year and a half ago.
Sure.
Right. Or a year and a half before that. And I think what I run into so often, and I want listeners to walk away feeling inspired from you with, is so many people feel stuck, right? So many people it's astounding to me when people finally feel like they can be authentic and open with me, and they look at me with tears in their eyes and like, Chris, I am so miserable and I feel stuck. What is it that I can do to take action, right? And I mean, I would ask you from a tactical standpoint for those listeners that just feel that, what is the best advice that you can give them to move towards it, right? I think your faith is a huge component of that camaraderie, right? But how would you say you would give advice to those people listening?
Sure. That's a fantastic question. And the only thing I can speak off would be part of just, in general, my testimony, you know, and I was in a place, like I had mentioned, where I felt completely crushed, personally, emotionally, mentally, and being in that state where I had tried to grip onto the professional side of life and tried to fix. I'm a fixer, you know. I'm data driven. I'm very disciplined. You know, like I can fix. I can shift here. I can change there. I can do this, and nothing was working. Nothing was working. You know, and it wasn't working because ultimately I had probably needed to go through a reinvention sooner than later, and I couldn't. One of my weaknesses is riding the fence too long, you know, and sitting on that fence, not knowing where and when to hop off of it and say, no, this is no longer working. But once I get off that fence, then it's off to the races, you know. And I had rode that fence too long, and when I hopped off that fence, I found that I was not ready to go off to the races because I wasn't ready, you know, like I wasn't in physical shape, you know, I wasn't in the shape that I needed to be in. And so my action in that area was to focus on myself, you know, and I really dove into my spirit. I dove into my mental health. I dove into my physical health. I dove into just getting a grasp and understanding of who I was as a person, recentering myself, you know, talking to people who knew me and said, you know, Kroy, this is who I knew who you were. This is who I know you to be. And
reconnection, right? I mean, you reconnected with family. And I think that's such an important point because when we go through, and I've been there, right? Like I talk about how I checked myself into a freaking rehab and like the most important thing, I think our instinct tells us to go cower in the corner by ourselves.
Right.
And instead, we've got to seek connection with God, seek connection with family, and seek connection with people that we truly trust to help us pull out. And you did that, right? And it's only you're going to continue that trajectory. And what a beautiful thing, right? What a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I would say that I didn't even really recognize that in my life until I needed it. Like until I had to have like God, family, and friends be there to pull me out. Because I had those connections growing up, you know, and I had just naturally found those through my life as a kid. Coaches were there, youth pastors were there, my family was there, and those connections were just naturally there because one, you're a child and your parents aren't just gonna more than likely just throw you out, and if some, you know, maybe they do, then you have a coach or a mentor or somebody that's kind of having that connection, and they kind of fed me along the way. And then before I kind of realized it, like I turned around and like you said, those connections had kind of either fizzled out or life got busy, they were busy, and I didn't have the connection that I should have maintained. So a great thing that you are really, really good at is making new connection and making real, new, authentic connection, which is a fabulous trait because that's one of my weaknesses. It's hard for me to make new, authentic connection.
I'm forcing you to do
You are. So I need you to walk next to me all the time and say like, go after him.
And I need you to be my blocking agent and say, now you got to pay him.
Right.
Sorry, Patrick, I'm stealing them.
Yeah. But I think a huge part of that too is when you make a real good connection and you know that it's going to be a connection that should be more than just a season in your life. It should be maybe 2 or 3 or 4 seasons, or you know, a real long connection is maintaining that connection and continuing to have that relationship and foster it and build it so that when you hit a tough time, that person can be right there for you. So it's not as hard or it's not as deep of a hole that you get into, or that bottom's closer than it should be, you know, farther away than it.
Totally.
And so that's one thing that I've realized too, is that to be on your own in a in the middle of the ocean in a storm is scary. Like you want some crew members with you to battle those waves, and I didn't have those, and I did, and I didn't even realize that I did, which was even more, I guess, humbling. And I was maybe even more grateful when I did kind of look up and there was people like you, and my family was right there, and some other close friends that like, regardless of how long it was, they were just right there and said, what can we do? How can we help? Let's talk through this. Let's walk through this. Let's build. Let's get ready to go, and let's go. And I think that comes, from being authentic. You can't have those people won't be there if you're not an authentic person, or you haven't made an authentic connection.
Well, I think one thing that I can attest to is that, like, I'm a very impatient human being, right? That's why you have a beard and I don't, right? And
but it's good.
It is, yeah.
It's a good trait.
Our greatest strengths are our greatest weaknesses,
sure.
right? And I think one of the other things that I've also acknowledged is that, one, not everyone has my speed, and two, you've got to let people work through those moments to get to a place where they can actually be ready to take action. And I will also tell people that I'm not really good at the cleanup, right? I'm not good at the 0 to 3, right? When you're crying and in the corner, and it's like, I could probably put you in touch with some good resources.
Sure.
But come to me when you're at like a 3 or a 4 and ready to go.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And I think we each specialize in
Right.
one or the other. And I think it's also acknowledging that as we go and connect, that to rely on those people, you knew better than to even reach out to me, because I was about to light a fire under you, right? Which was part of the process. But like, that to me is also like embracing our own strengths, and then also understanding who it is that we should be utilizing as we're looking towards that reinvention. Right.
Right. And that's a testament to you, because you know exactly who you are as a person. And you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And your strength is networking, which you have an amazing network of people, and you have experts all around you, where somebody comes to you personally and says, Chris, I need help. And if you can't do it, you say, okay, you're going over there for now. And then when you need me, like you said, you're on that sideline. And I knew all along, as I was working through my own process of pulling out, that you were standing on the sideline waiting, ready to, do what you needed to do when I gave you the go. And to have a friend like that is just incredible. So thank you.
Yeah, well, and received, and nothing gives me greater joy than that, right? And it's why I am producing this podcast, which hopefully lots of people will listen to. We don't really know yet, but I truly do believe in my calling. Like I feel like the God stuff is, I was born to make a difference, and that is a duty, right? And I need to make money along the way too, right? Which is why you're going to be my agent. Okay. But I think so many of us go through life without ever taking action on these dreams and passions. And once again, looking at your story and looking at you in the middle of what is another new season and era and reinvention, it's so inspiring, right? And what I look forward to most is to watch the next 2 to 5 years, to then see that impact multiplier through you, right?
Yeah.
And that's really why I was put here, is to be catalyst with others. And I think for so long, I was telling Bert this, like, I always felt like impact is 1-to-1, right? Or 1 to a few. And it wasn't until I realized that it's actually, if I can help impact Kroy to then impact others, like, that's the impact multiplier.
Right.
Which is why this is called the Impact Factory.
Yep.
But I want to ask you a question that I ask everyone, which is the only consistent question I have on Tuff Talk, which is, to you, what is your dream? Like, what is that thing that you feel like lights a fire in you? What, especially at this stage in your life, having experienced so many different eras and accomplished so many big things, and you've met all the most famous people, right? Like,
Sure.
what to you is your dream that ultimately is driving you forward in this journey?
Currently, right now, my dream and my focus is to just deepen my relationship with my Heavenly Father. And, as a kid, I was raised in a Christian home, and I was raised in church, and it's hard as a child to kind of understand the gravity of God and what that actually means. And it's hard as a child to read your Bible. And I was in it, and I did Bible studies, and I was in youth groups and all those things. But ultimately, life came at me fast, and I thought I could handle it. And I handled it for a while, and I built and created, and I didn't do that on my own, even though I thought I was kind of in control at the time. Knowing now I was not really in control at all. And I know everything that I have faced and everything that I will face ultimately is for a greater purpose. And my focus now is to dive as deep as I possibly can, day in and day out, for the rest of my life, to figure out what path God wants me to go on, and to use my testimony and the circumstances and the situations that I've been in to inspire people, to let people know that regardless of how deep in despair you feel, there is a way out, there is light, and there is a path that you can take to get to betterness, goodness, and ultimately a place where you can have impact yourself with the people that you love and your community, and who knows, maybe the world. People don't know. I have no idea what ultimately the impact I will have, and how far my reach will go. And if you approach it with the right, again, foundation and the right core beliefs, there really is no limit to what you can be used to do in this world. And so that's right now where what is exciting for me. I'm not there yet. I'm like you said, I'm right in the middle of it. And right now for me, stability is key and crucial. And I have a majority of the stableness I think I need. There's a few pieces that I think are coming that will continue to create some more stability. And once that stability is established, I'm very excited to see where some risk can be taken, calculated risk, and some significant growth can be sought after to build something fantastic.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So can I ask a question along those lines?
Any question?
Can I ask, I don't know if you know my friend Mayo, who is also on the podcast, but like one of my favorite people in the world. And Mayo, who also is very much guided by faith. Mm-hmm. And, he started a church here. And when I am struggling, I reach out to those people like Mayo. And one thing I always struggle with, being very driven, right? And action is not my issue. It's actually like not acting, like no more things, right?
Right.
But when you look at this toggle between making it happen and letting it happen, how do you manage that? Right? Like, and Mayo and I talk about it. Mayo's like, you can pray to God all you want. I want $1 million, and then you're just waiting and waiting. It's not going to happen.
Sure.
Right? So how do you discern between that line of making it happen and then letting things happen?
Sure.
For you personally.
For me personally,
because I need to learn off of this.
Sure. Like you said, part of it is in your, if you want to call it meditation, if you want to call it prayer, whatever your faith. My faith is prayer. My faith is God. And ultimately I lean on him because I know that I am not in control of anything. Right. And so when you have that relationship with that higher being, God, you know that he's all good. And every circumstance you face, he will pull all good from, and he will create all good from those things. And so day in and day out, I lean somewhat on just the rational thought thought process of like, this is a rational thought, or this is something that I need to do. Like, you know, we all need to make money. We all need to feed ourselves. We all need to take care of our responsibilities as parents and fathers and brothers and, you know, whatever it is. And so do those things again, based on the foundation of your core beliefs: kindness, patience, understanding, empathy, all of those wonderful things that you should do and approach your responsibilities with. And when you approach those with that, ultimately you put out a vibration, or you put out an energy that makes connections with people, or opens doors that needed to be open for you. And you know that when that door gets opened or that door gets closed, that you don't stress about it. You know, like, you don't, if something gets closed and maybe you weren't ready for it, you just know that it was closed for a reason. Or if it gets opened and you're like, oh, this makes me really nervous, like, that takes me out of my comfort zone. Out of your comfort zone is where you grow. That's where rapid growth happens. And so you just trust that that door's been opened for a reason. If you've opened it, I can handle it. And you know that I can handle it. So, yeah, I mean, it boils down to the things that you're so passionate about yourself, the connections that you make, knowing that as you walk through life, and if there's some sort of divine meeting with somebody, or if there's just some sort of kind of random thing that happens, that if you've continued to walk in your faith, that meeting is there for a reason. And if it becomes something, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just, you know, you walk through kind of life knowing that he's the director of it. And part of it's internal urges, you know, like internal pulls, like, oh, I think I should do that, or maybe I should. And you got to listen to that.
And sometimes it takes your friends to remind you of that.
It does.
Right. Like I text my friend Muhammad, Masakoi, you know Muhammad, right? And I'll be like, I'm going, like, check this out, or do it. He'll always respond back with something so profound. But more than once he said, you're in the thin place, right? You're in this thin place between what you were born to do and following that energy and the God piece versus forcing something, right?
Sure.
And so, first of all, I just want to thank you for coming by the Impact Factory and making the time. And I know you don't do this stuff that often, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate our connection, and I cannot wait to watch how many lives you end up impacting, Kroy.
Oh, man. Anytime, Chris. This was so fun, and I cannot thank you enough. I mean, there's a handful of people in my life that are contributed to me actually being here today, and you were one of them. And I could never repay you for the things that you've done for me, being there in my life. And I mean, yeah, I know that I'll know you till your last breath, I think. That's the type of connection and relationship we have. So
I love it, dude.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Boom.